Welcome to the Fitness Freedom Podcast. Today I have Sara Chambers. She is the CEO of Elly and Nora Creative, and she is the founder of Chicks Who Give a Hoot, a nonprofit centered on empowering women entrepreneurs. She's also the author of Do It Fat, which is a guide to claiming visibility and ambition regardless of body size or shape. Her heart is in helping women separate their sense of worth from outdated body standards. And she's here to talk about her own journey to body acceptance and how to claim that in the workforce today. Welcome, Sara. So happy to have you on Fitness Freedom.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Michelle. It's my deepest honor to be here.
Yay! So, can you just give us a little bit of your story in relation to fitness and your body? And I know that's a big question, but whatever you would like to share, because we live in a context and we're human beings with stories. So, I would like to hear yours.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. You're right. That is kind of a big existential question. I'm going to try to unpack it to the best of my ability, with the most clarity, and um, be concise. So, my career is that I'm an entrepreneur. I own a creative agency and I work primarily with female entrepreneurs to help build their brands. And it has always been about creating a business asset. And over the last many, many, many years of doing this work, I've realized how there's such an intersection between branding and and personal development, and how we can build the most beautiful, amazing, structurally sound, strategic, authentic brand. But and for me and my clients, the women who are behind those brands are not yet ready to fully embrace them and embody them and step into them, then that's where the problem lies. Because you can have this incredible brand and then it can kind of sit in a Google Drive, it can sit in files, it can sit in a brand guidelines book, and you not do anything with it. But a brand really matters when you embody it and when you step into it. And for a lot of women, that has been a really big kind of obstacle. And for me, it's kind of been the same. So I've kind of walked this line between helping my clients navigate this moment in their own careers and then also kind of working through that same situation and that same feeling in my own life. And so I've kind of ran parallel. And as far as fitness goes, I was an athlete in high school. And then, your body changes like after you kind of move out of those phases, and fitness spaces became really confronting and triggering in my adult life. And so, I've had to really kind of find places that feel safe and feel joyful rather than feel constricting. And that's just definitely been a journey for me. And I will say, like, I feel like I'm in the messy middle of that still. Definitely haven't like arrived at any conclusions. Still kind of working my way through that as we speak.
I love that. Yeah, none of us have arrived, and I appreciate your honesty there. The messy middle. How has being a professional in the world and body image like impacted you? I understand what you're saying about brands because especially when you own your own company and you're representing yourself, you're basically like your brand or the values that you have, you're trying to share with others as well. So it's a deeply personal and vulnerable experience to be
Yeah.
seen and to show that. How does body image, whether personally or with clients you work with, like how do you think that affects their careers, especially in relationship to like branding and showing up as themselves?
Yeah, there's such a direct line between those two. And I think that it feels really obvious when you look at it and you point it out, but it seems like not something that is talked about as much or isn't as apparent. I think that much like the rest of the world, we are presented with a beauty standard, and there are, lots of research and studies showing that statistically there's a correlation between like standard beauty and success in entrepreneurship or in career. And it's a little bit of a double bind for women, unfortunately, because women do, better when they meet that beauty standard up until a certain point. But then once they reach that level of success, they can't necessarily always maintain that respect because of that beauty standard. So it's really this like double bind that women are in, and there's like an invisible tripwire, and women are constantly trying to figure out, like, how do I be attractive and fit the standard enough to be accepted and grow my career, but then not too attractive and not too confronting so that I threaten anybody. And it's kind of this back and forth balance that women are constantly in. And that same standard is true, unfortunately, even in the entrepreneurship space. So it doesn't matter if you're in a corporate role with a job and working for someone else, or if you're trying to build a business and a brand yourself, you do have a personal brand, you do have a reputation, and women are constantly playing that I like to call it mental gymnastics of, how can I be very hyper aware of like how I'm being perceived? And a lot of times we are trying to take ourselves and shove ourselves into a box to be palatable and acceptable and non-threatening to other people rather than being our true and authentic selves. So I think that sometimes it feels like we're in conflict with ourselves and with how we're being perceived by an external world.
Wow, that is so well put. And it is so subtle too, because like think about going into a space of entrepreneurs and you're just hyper aware of how you're presenting, no matter what your body shape is, and you're like kind of scanning other people. It's like there's this unspoken expectation, especially for women. And it is like a kind of a catch 22. From your perspective, what do you think is the best way through that? Like, how have you wrapped your head around? I was listening to your TED Talk, and you
Mhm.
mentioned how you have lost some weight recently and how that is complex because of you. I mean, you can share more of that, which yeah, I would love to hear more of that. Like, how do we go through this world? How do we navigate this world being authentic and then also moving forward?
Yeah, no, it's a fair question. As you mentioned, I, over the last year, have lost a pretty significant amount of weight myself. And one of the things that surprised me the most about that experience was how I really kind of, like, embarrassingly enough, assumed or kind of thought that a lot of the body shame that I had experienced my entire life would kind of melt away with the pounds lost. And I found the opposite to be true. I found that pounds lost really made the light feel like I was more exposed. It stung a little bit more than I expected, is kind of how I like to think about it. And as compliments started pouring in, I like to say that you look great is not a neutral statement, because it's a commentary on how someone used to look prior and how they are like fitting into a more acceptable beauty standard today. And it's also a statement to everybody else in the room who may still be in what I like to say, I'm using quotes right now, the before body of someone who's still in that other body that you used to be in currently. And we're not being aware of how, when we speak, we're presenting expectation for, hey, by me complimenting you, it's not just a surface level compliment. It's me saying, hey, you look so much better than how you look before. And that is not without the recognition that I think that you looked bad before. And then it's inadvertently a commentary to everyone else in the room about what is good and what is acceptable. And so I was personally really triggered on the other end of body transformation. And it's presented a lot of nuance for me because I wanted to remain in complete alignment with my values around being a body positive person and really embracing diversity of all body shapes and sizes and physical experiences, while also going through a body transformation that I recognized is going to put me closer and closer to a body ideal standard. Although, like, I'm sitting here today completely still outside of the standard, I got to experience the privilege of being an inching closer and closer to that. And I wanted to create work and voice and authority in the world that didn't shame my previous versions of myself and really honored her well, while also making sure that other women in the world didn't feel like my body transformation was now a mandate for them.
I love that. Thank you for putting it so extremely well. You're so well spoken. I love the nuances. So I'm sure you've put a lot of information in your new book, Do It Fat, which is, I guess, the conclusion you came to, right? Just
Mm.
do it fat. Can you tell us more about that and some of the nuggets that Do It Fat contains for this conundrum that we're in?
Yeah, absolutely. So, Do It Fat is, intentionally intended to kind of be a little combative and a little bit confronting in that way because this word has been painful, a painful sting for people. You can't think of anything worse that you could be called outside of fat. And I don't necessarily feel like I want to like reclaim the word. There's plenty of fat liberation and body positive influencer and people in the world doing that work. But I wanted to kind of neutralize it a little bit. And I think a lot of us have probably heard the notion of do it scared. And it's this idea that fear doesn't vanish, but we have to move anyway. We have to move through it anyway. And so do it fat is really the same. Is like, hey, people often say, like, I can't do that thing because I'm too fat. And my response is, baby, do it fat. Like you could still do it. It has absolutely nothing. So I want to remove the shame that we have around our bodies as the barrier for going out and living our lives and doing big things because women are statistically likely to opt out of opportunities, career and personal, when we do not feel good in our bodies. And I want to invite women to step into their biggest, boldest lives in the bodies that they have today.
And you make such a good point too, because it's not just our size or our weight. We could still be dealing with the insecurity regardless of our our weight and size and shape. It's really a mental, personal relationship with our bodies, and it's unfortunately so difficult to have that confidence in today's society because
Mm,
all the
yeah.
messages we're given growing up, and it sucks. It really
It's
sucks for women.
it's really layered. Yes, it's really layered. I think you make a good and valid point though, and that's something that I talk about in the first chapter of this book is the idea that it doesn't matter if you're a size 2 or a size 22 because looking in the mirror with eyes of criticism is a universal experience. And fat is not a weight or a pant size, fat is a fear. And that's why, you can have a woman who is a size 4, still look in the mirror and say, like, do I look fat in this? Because,
Mhm.
if you're in a larger body, you can scoff at that woman, but she's not lacking self-awareness. She's asking the same very questions that we're asking. And those questions are, am I enough? And I be accepted? And do I fit the standard? And those questions are true for all of us, regardless of what size body that we live in. And this book really allowed me to dive so much deeper into understanding the systemic reasons why women hate their bodies. And on the other side of that knowledge is just so much freedom.
How did you feel discovering so much of that? Was there some anger, grief, some
Oh, good
excitement,
grief. So much rage.
rage? Yeah, I love that word.
So much rage.
Right?
Certain chapters made me feel a little ragier than others. But at the end of this, I know it might seem counterintuitive, but I really do stand in my integrity when I say that finding my way to the other side of body insecurity was done in this work and in this research and in this writing and in this project and not in the pounds lost.
Yes. It's the knowledge that's empowering, right? And understanding that we live in a world where this has been the norm. And so we're not wild for feeling this way. But you're so right. Because dealt with an eating disorder of the restrictive type. And so my biggest fear for years was being fat, like gaining weight.
Yep.
And when I would say I feel fat, what it was, no matter how much I weighed, because it didn't matter, it was never enough. When I would say I feel fat, it would mean I feel shame, or I feel not enough, or I feel
Yep.
like there's something wrong with me, or there's something I need to fix. And no amount of weight loss I learned would cure that or fix that. It was an internal rewiring and acceptance of my body, and so many factors that go into that healing process. But
Yeah.
use
Yeah.
that as a word or a cover for so many different emotions. And so
Yeah.
you're kind of unshaming that and saying in this book, do it fat. It's like it is synonymous with saying do it scared, because it is feeling like, hey, I don't feel like I'm enough and I'm still
Yeah.
gonna do it, or I'm gonna do it despite what the culture tells me.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that I don't know if you are at all into the Enneagram at
I
all.
am.
Are you? Okay, great. Well, then this will make sense. But I am an Enneagram 8, which is a challenger. And that personality type, as the title kind of lends to, is naturally a little challenging and confrontational. And so I like to think of this book as something that is going to probably challenge you. It's going to invite you into a new mindset. It's going to invite you to set down some of the shame that you've been carrying around for so long. And it's not an overnight thing. It's going to take some time. But I really do believe that on the other side of that is the rebellion that we've been asking for. And we can kind of take up our arms and we can choose a new story.
Yeah.
I think that to me, language matters quite a bit. As a writer and a communicator and a brander, language matters to me. And I think that everything that we have in our life, in our experience, is found by the meaning that we assign it. And we can just choose to assign this a new meaning, and that we have that power and autonomy if we so choose.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Rebellion. I like the idea of rebellion. As a four who likes to be different, I can relate to that, to that very.
I am married to a 4, so I know your
Oh,
type very
I
well.
like it and love it and hate it sometimes.
Oh, we're a
The
pair
good, the
for
bad, the
sure.
ugly.
Yeah, well, that's okay. I have 4 in my tri-type, so I
Yeah.
see you.
Thank you. So this book, who should read this book, or who is it designed for? Like, who did you have in mind, or who would you love to pick up this book? As few or as many people as your heart, as
Mm.
the author of this, who would you like to read this?
Well, I think that there are a lot of messages that are applicable to a lot of people. This book is written specifically for women. Um, I think that the women who might get the most out of every single chapter at every single level are going to be probably millennial women, just because that's who I am, and that's kind of some of the context that I personally bring in. So I think that as far as like relating to me as the author, that woman is gonna be able to relate to a lot of the stories around growing up and coming of age in the early 2000s, which I talk a lot about in one of the chapters of the book. Um, I I think that this is a book for ambitious women. So whatever that looks like, if you're an entrepreneur, a business owner, I think that this will land very well. Especially there's a chapter called "Your Body Is Not Your Brand," and I think that women who are trying to build something. Will find a lot of resonance in that, but definitely doesn't have to be entrepreneurs, but women who are ambitious in that way, I think are going to get the most value.
Okay, that's cool. It makes me excited to read it.
Yeah.
Of all the chapters, and I'm sure it's like picking a favorite child, but is there a chapter or a segment that feels really resonant or close to your heart that you could share a little bit with us, like a little excerpt, or just maybe it was the process of writing it or what it contained, or maybe it was personal for you? Is there something that stands out?
Yeah, I will say that one of my favorite chapters is chapter 4, and it's called Prioritizing the Female Gaze. And it is all about understanding the differences between the male gaze and the female gaze, and how really the male gaze has kind of infiltrated everything in our life, and how when we talk about how we dress ourselves, we often look at clothes to say, like, is that flattering? And really, what flattering means is, does that make me look sexy and small? And it's about reorienting ourselves to say, like, what would it look like if instead of prioritizing the male gaze, we prioritized the female gaze? And it's not about trying to be sexy and small for women. It's about prioritizing connection and joy and creativity and embracing those parts of ourselves when we choose to get dressed or when we choose to show up in the world. And for me as a brand strategist, it's about understanding who your audience is. And I loved kind of the aha moment that I had when I just decided that men were no longer my audience.
That's so great. I love it. Yes, I mean, I'm queer, so I'm attracted to different gender expressions. But if I'm looking at a woman or someone who presents as woman, I like the thing that attracts me the most is if I can sense that they are being authentic or being creative, or
Yeah.
being themselves. And that is like what is the most attractive or the most, I guess, connected
Well,
for
and
me.
I think that that's an important point to say, is because this is not always tied to like sexual attraction, because I could not necessarily need to attract a woman sexually, and I can still show up in my full authentic self and still be creating this presentation for the female gaze, right? And
Mhm.
so I think that it's an important distinction that still plays true even if you are attracted to or in relationship to someone of the same gender expression.
Yeah, yeah. So, what would you like to tell? I know that you have the book, and we will read it, and we will get our hands on it and be excited and learn so much because I'm really excited about it. But if you could take something and just give the listeners a nugget or something that we can start even tomorrow, like there's already been so much value, but it's something that we could even
Mm.
like start thinking, or a shift we can make when we go to work tomorrow, or when
Mm.
you know, get ready for the day or go to that next networking event or, business meeting or, go for a pitch or whatever it is. Like, what can we take and feeling more confident in our bodies, whatever size we are, whatever shape we are.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that we can do is start becoming very attuned and very aware to the internal dialogue that is playing in our minds and in our heads. And so when you start to hear something in your mind that is unkind, and is something that you wouldn't say to anyone else, because I'm assuming that I'm speaking to kind people who wouldn't say those things to other people, and we wouldn't imagine speaking those words of like hate and disdain to other people in our life, but we speak them to ourselves. So I think the first step is just a self-awareness of starting to pay attention to those things and like recognizing them and kind of like pinging them with a little bit of curiosity. And then once you ping it with curiosity, what I want you to do is consider, is that coming from me or is that coming from an external source? And start to try to figure out, is that something that is deep within me that I need to like purge, or is that a narrative and a meaning that is being placed on me that I didn't ever sign up for or ask for or align with?
It all goes down to awareness and being aware of what's happening in our brains and where it's coming from. And that's why education is
Yeah.
so important, and learning where maybe some of these messages came from. It can be so
Yeah.
empowering.
Yeah, absolutely.
I like to ask all of my guests one question, but before I ask the final question, where can people find you? Where would you like people to find you?
Yeah, I mean, I hang out on Instagram mostly. You can find me at Sara Chambers Creative. That's Sarah with no H, just Sara, Chambers Creative. That's generally where I hang out the most. I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn if that's your vibe. And you can also find my agency at Elly. It's Ely and Nora Creative, Elly and Nora Creative. If you want to engage with my company in that way. But those are the places where I hang out online the most.
Yeah, and I'll put those in the show notes. And if all goes to plan, the day that this releases is the day that your book comes out, which is the 18th, right? November 18th.
November 18th. Yep.
Okay, so where can people get your book?
Yeah, I think the best and easiest place is to go to doitfatbook.com, and that will have all of the links to purchase it on Amazon and a variety of other places.
Okay, cool. And I'll put those all in the show notes so people can just go down and click it. Really easy. Thank you so much for being here and sharing this with, it's so valuable. Like this is so needed. So like I really, really appreciate what you've done. Thank you. And I want to ask you, I ask all my guests this, if you could share one message of health with the entire world, closest to your heart, what would it be? What would you say?
Mm. I would say that there's a lot of people who are trying to define what health means. There's a lot of people who are saying, this is what is healthy. This is what you should do. This is what is right for you. And that definition, like I said, language matters a lot to me. And it's the meaning that we assign it. And language and meaning and definitions shift depending on the place where we live, the context that we've grown up in, the culture that we were raised in, and the context that we currently find ourselves in. And so, what I would ask is for you to just define what health means for you and then have the full confidence to live that out in a way that is in alignment with that definition.
I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of my definitions of health is being most authentically you.
Yeah.
That's the healthiest we can be, regardless of how that looks and ends up looking. That's
A
beautiful.
hundred, 100%. Yep.
Yes. Oh, I'm so happy to talk with you. Thank you so much for giving us your time. Thank you for writing this book. I can't wait to read it, and I'm sure listeners will be excited to read it as well. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me. I really appreciate it.